Hello class, today we're talking about the quadratic formula and we're going to use it in different problems. So before we even begin, I want to show you where it comes from. It starts with a quadratic in standard form, and then you're going to complete the square. So the first thing you have to do to complete the square, and you do not have to write this down, I just want to show you where it comes from. Okay, first of all, completing the square, you want to divide everything by a. Then the negative, or the c over a goes to the other side. Okay, and then this is the complete the square part. So we want to take the b, square it, and simplify it that way, and add it to both sides. Okay, and then that factors nicely. And anytime you have something squared, you want to take the square root of both sides. And then you end up with something like this, which then simplifies into the quadratic formula. So everything we have learned before about completing the square applies, and now we can use this quadratic formula for all problem solving for x. Okay, so this is where the notes begin, and this just says from standard form to quadratic formula where the values are coming from. Okay, so if we are going to solve the quadratic equations, always include an x squared. The only way to solve it in the past was we could put it into standard form. We could factor it, set it equal to 0, and then solve. Or 3, we could complete the square. So in our past, those are the 3 things that we could have done. Okay, the problem though is that most quadratics cannot be factored. Therefore, the quadratic formula is needed. Okay, so it solves the equations. Excuse me. So here again is our formula. Step 1, you're going to arrange the quadratic in standard form. Okay, and then step 2, write what a, b, and c are. Step 3, plug in the numbers into the formula. And step 4, simplify, especially the radical first. And then write both answers down. So go ahead and push pause and write those down, please. Okay, next we have a few examples. So if you remember on the steps, we are going to need to set it equal to 0 first. Because that's negative, I am going to put everything to the right by adding x squared. There's the 3x, and I'm going to subtract the 4 from both sides. Now I'm left with x squared plus 3x minus 4. Now in some cases you will be able to factor them nicely, but for the sake of practicing the quadratic formula, I'm going to leave them as they are. The a value in this case is 1. The b value is 3, and the c value is negative 4. Very important to set those up, always taking the sign to the left at the very first. So if we're going to solve for x, we're going to say x equals opposite b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. So I'm going to take all this information right here and plug it in all over 2a. Now start with the radical. This right here is called the discriminant. We learn more about that later. 9 and then plus 16 equals 25. So that means 25 is going to go inside the radical. And then we know that square root of 25 is 5. And now with those two answers, I would like you to go ahead and solve for both of them. Negative 3 plus 5 over 2 and negative 3 minus 5 over 2 gives you an answer of 2 over 2, which is 1, and negative 8 over 2, which is negative 4. So your values are going to be 1 and negative 4. Both of those answers will work when you plug it into the original problem. For the next one, we again want to start by setting an equal to 0. And the negative 6 comes from subtracting 6x from both sides. This one has a common factor of 3, so I'm going to divide every term by 3 just to make it easier on the quadratic formula. Smaller numbers makes it a little easier. Okay, so the a value is 1. B value is negative 2. Again, take all the signs, take the sign to the left, and then 5. Now let's use the quadratic formula. X equals opposite b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And then again, look at that the quadratic underneath, or the discriminant it's called. That's 4 minus 20. That gives you a negative 16. So then underneath the radical should be a negative 16 all over 2. Okay, now we have studied imaginary numbers, so the negative's going to come out, and so is the 16. It would give you 4i. And all three of these, it must be all three, have a factor of 2, so it's going to be 1 plus or minus 2i for these solutions. For example 3, I would like you to push pause and see if you can get the answer of negative 1 plus or minus square root of 6 all over 2. This is considered the exact form. I would like you to leave it in exact form, please. Okay, so go ahead and push pause. So hopefully your work looks something like this. Standard form, A, B, and C. Okay, everything A, B, and C filled into the quadratic formula, and then you get negative 1 plus or minus radical 6 all over 2. And that's the exact answer. If you did want to approximate the answer, it's going to be 0.72 and negative 1.72. Sometimes decimals are needed when it comes to word problems. So for the last example, I want you to go ahead and also do this before class tomorrow. And your goal is to get the x values to be 14.5 and 1. So write those down and then save, go ahead and solve that for class tomorrow.